When you pray, you are not just sending words into the air. You are opening the door for heaven to invade earth. Prayer is the connection point where the natural and the supernatural meet. It's where God's power enters human weakness and begins to do what you could never do on your own. Some situations in your life will not shift until heaven is invited in, and prayer is that invitation. Prayer releases the authority of the king into the middle of your chaos, and when the king shows up, darkness has no choice but to bow. Eternity is not some distant, far-off concept that we will think about someday when we are older or when life slows down. Eternity is closer than your next breath. Every tick of the clock, every sunrise, every sunset is moving you one step nearer to forever. Life is short, fragile, and unpredictable, and yet we live as though we have unlimited time. We make plans for next month, next year, the next 10 years, and there's nothing wrong with planning. But if those plans leave eternity out of the picture, they are incomplete at best and dangerous at worst. You can save money, build a career, raise a family, and still miss the one thing that truly lasts if you forget that eternity is waiting. Think about how easily we prepare for things that may never happen. We buy insurance for disasters that might never come. We prepare for retirement even though we don't know if we will live to see it. And yet eternity is guaranteed. It is the one future event that every single person will face. And still, we often live as though it is a distant idea with no urgency. The reality is that eternity is not just ahead of you, it is pressing in on you right now. The choices you make today are eternal choices. The way you spend your time, the way you treat people, the way you obey or ignore God is shaping your forever even while you live in the temporary. When you realize how close eternity is, it changes how you live today. It gives you urgency to do what matters most. You stop procrastinating when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to obedience, when it comes to faith. You stop wasting days on bitterness, jealousy, and trivial drama because you understand that life is too short and eternity is too long to live like that. You start asking bigger questions. Will this decision matter in 10 years? Will it matter in eternity? That kind of thinking puts everything in perspective. Eternity is closer than you think, and that should bring both comfort and conviction. Comfort because it means that pain, loss, and suffering are not the end of the story. Conviction because it means you don't have time to play with sin, delay your calling, or live halfway committed. Every breath is a gift and a reminder that forever is only one heartbeat away. Living with eternity in mind doesn't mean living in fear. It means living with purpose. It means letting the reality of forever give weight to today's choices. It means preparing not just for the next opportunity, but for the next life. When you wake up every day aware that eternity is just ahead, you live more intentionally, love more deeply, give more freely, and walk more closely with God, knowing that you are preparing for what will never end. Planning is wise, planning is good. But planning that leaves out eternity is planning on shaky ground. It is like building a house on sand. It might look beautiful for a while, but when the storm comes, it won't last. You can have the best strategy, the clearest vision, the most detailed budget, but if you are not factoring in the reality that one day you will step into eternity, your plans are incomplete. Life has a way of interrupting even the most carefully laid out schedules. Tragedy strikes without warning. Opportunities disappear overnight. People we love can be gone in an instant. And that is why planning without eternity is dangerous. It is building your life on something temporary, something fragile, something that can shift and collapse at any moment. When you build on sand, you are trusting in things that cannot hold you up when life shakes. You trust your bank account, but markets crash. You trust your job, but jobs end. You trust your health, but one doctor's report can change everything. Planning for tomorrow without thinking about eternity is like living as if this life is all there is. It is focusing so much on your comfort now that you forget your accountability later. The Bible calls us to build on a solid foundation, to anchor our lives in something that cannot be shaken. That foundation is God's truth, His promises, His kingdom, all of which are eternal. When your plans are rooted in eternity, you plan differently. You don't just ask, what will make me happy right now? You ask, what will honor God forever? You don't just plan to acquire more, you plan to give more. You don't just plan to climb higher, you plan to lift others as you go. Eternity-focused planning is not about neglecting your earthly responsibilities. It is about aligning them with your eternal purpose. It is about making decisions that will still look wise on the other side of time. Building on eternity also gives you stability when storms come. When life doesn't go the way you plan, you are not crushed because your hope was never in the plan. It was in the planner. When you lose something temporary, you can still stand because your faith was in what is eternal. People who forget eternity panic when things fall apart, but people who remember eternity remain steady because they know this life is not the end of the story. So plan for tomorrow. Save, prepare, work hard, but do it with eternity in mind. Make sure your plans are anchored in God's will so that when the winds blow and the waves crash, your life will still stand, because a life built on sand will eventually sink. But a life built on eternity will outlast the storm and still be standing when tomorrow is gone. Every decision you make is a step in a direction, and that direction is shaping your destiny whether you realize it or not. Life is not just a random series of events. It is a collection of choices, and each choice is like a seed that will produce a harvest. The problem is that most of us think only about the immediate outcome of our decisions. We ask, how will this affect me today? But we rarely ask, how will this affect me forever? Every choice, from the smallest to the biggest, is an investment in eternity. When you remember that your decisions are shaping your destiny, you begin to think differently. You stop making choices based on emotions alone, because you know emotions change, but consequences remain. You stop settling for what is convenient if it will cost you what is eternal. You begin to weigh every action through a bigger lens. Does this move me closer to God's purpose or further away? Does this align me with His will or distract me from it? Will I be glad I made this decision 1,000,000 years from now? Destiny is not a one-time event. It is the sum of thousands of daily decisions. The decision to forgive when you'd rather stay angry is shaping your character. The decision to pray when you feel too tired is shaping your faith. The decision to tell the truth when lying would be easier is shaping your integrity. None of these decisions may seem dramatic in the moment, but they are all bricks in the house of your destiny. And if you ignore this reality, you may wake up years later wondering how you got so far from where you wanted to be. The enemy knows the power of your decisions, which is why he fights to influence them. He tempts you with shortcuts, distractions, and compromises because he wants you to plant seeds that will produce regret instead of reward. But when you live with eternity in mind, you stop letting the enemy choose for you. You stop letting culture dictate what is right. You start choosing what pleases God, even when it costs you something now, because you know the reward will be far greater later. Every destiny-shaping decision is an opportunity to partner with God's plan for your life. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. If you have made bad decisions before, prayer and repentance can reset your direction and redeem your story. Eternity is not just about where you will go when you die. It is about what kind of life you are building while you live. The choices you make today echo into forever, so choose wisely. Let every decision be a step toward the destiny God designed for you, not just a reaction to what feels good in the moment. The enemy's favorite weapon is distraction. He doesn't always come at you with something obviously evil. Often he simply keeps you busy with what is temporary, so you never focus on what is eternal. He knows if he can keep your calendar full, your mind racing, and your heart preoccupied, you will have no time to think about forever. He will use good things, work, entertainment, success, relationships, and twist them just enough so they consume you. The goal isn't just to get you to sin, but to get you to settle for less than God's purpose. Distraction is subtle, but it is deadly because it makes you comfortable living in the temporary while ignoring the eternal. This is why so many people feel exhausted, but still empty. They are running hard, chasing goals, building careers, collecting achievements, yet there is no deep satisfaction because they are not connected to what truly lasts. The enemy loves to keep you running in circles so that you mistake activity for progress. You can be busy and still be headed nowhere. You can fill your days with noise and still miss the very reason you were put on this earth. Distraction doesn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes it just looks like misplaced focus. When you forget eternity, the temporary starts to feel urgent. The pressure to keep up, to be seen, to achieve more begins to drive your decisions. You lose sight of the bigger picture. You start spending more energy on building your brand than on building your soul. You start caring more about who follows you than who you are following. You start storing treasures in places where moth and rust destroy because you think this world is all there is. That's exactly where the enemy wants you. So consumed with the here and now that you never prepare for the there and then. But when you wake up and recognize the distraction for what it is, everything changes. You begin to see through the noise. You begin to say a no to things that drain your spirit, even if they seem attractive on the surface. You start scheduling time for prayer, for reflection, for eternal investments because you understand that your soul is worth more than the whole world. Distraction loses its grip when you choose to focus on what God says matters most. The enemy is not afraid of a busy Christian. He is afraid of a focused one. He knows that when you fix your eyes on eternity, he can't control you with the temporary. He can't bait you with quick pleasures. He can't lure you with shallow success because you are aiming higher than what this life can offer. The way to beat distraction is not just by doing less, but by doing what matters most. When you set your mind on things above, the temporary loses its power to pull you away from your eternal purpose. When eternity becomes real to you, it changes the way you set your priority. Suddenly, the things that once seemed so urgent don't feel quite as urgent anymore. And the things you used to ignore now feel like they can't wait. You stop measuring success by how much you have, how many people applaud you, or how high you climb on the world's ladder. You start measuring success by faithfulness, by whether or not you are doing what God has called you to do. Eternity reorders everything. It makes you slow down long enough to ask what actually matters and what will still matter 1,000 years from now. When you live with eternity in view, your calendar shifts. You stop giving all your time to things that drain you and start making space for what fills your soul. Prayer is no longer just a quick obligation, it becomes a lifeline. Reading scripture stops being a box to check and starts being nourishment for your spirit. Serving others stops being a burden and starts being an opportunity to store treasures in heaven. Eternity changes your budget too. You stop spending everything on yourself and start investing in things that have eternal return. Generosity becomes a joy, not a chore, because you know you are funding something that will outlast you. An eternal perspective also shifts the way you handle relationships. Instead of holding grudges, you forgive quickly because you know bitterness won't follow you into eternity, but its consequences can hurt you right now. Instead of chasing shallow connections, you go deeper with people who help you grow closer to God. You start having conversations that matter, speaking words that encourage, and living in a way that points others toward eternity too. Even your struggles look different when eternity is in focus. Trials don't feel like the end of the story, they feel like part of the preparation. You can endure suffering with hope because you know this life is not all there is. Eternity reminds you that God is using even the hard things to shape you, to grow you, to prepare you for something greater. You stop wasting time on petty drama because you realize you only get one life to make an eternal difference. Without eternity, priorities get out of order. You end up chasing things that don't last and wondering why you still feel empty. But when eternity is front and center, you start living intentionally. You start using your time, your resources, and your energy on what actually counts. And when you stand before God one day, you will be glad you made decisions that reflected forever instead of just today. Eternity doesn't just change where you're going. It changes how you live right now. Hope is a powerful force, but hope that is tied only to what happens on earth is fragile. When your hope depends on circumstances, you are only as strong as your latest good day. One disappointment can shatter you, one setback can crush you, one loss can make you feel like life has no meaning. But when your hope is anchored in eternity, it cannot be shaken because it is not tied to what changes, it is tied to what lasts forever. Hope beyond earthly circumstances is what allows you to keep moving when life doesn't make sense, to keep trusting when the answer hasn't come, and to keep believing when everything around you says it's over. Eternal hope reminds you that suffering is temporary, but glory is eternal. It tells you that pain has an expiration date, but God's promises do not. It lifts your eyes above the situation you are in and lets you see the bigger picture. You realize that the story isn't finished yet, that God is still writing, and that your present chapter is not the last one. When you have that kind of hope, you don't give up easily. You don't let the enemy convince you that what you see is all there is. You know that there is a beyond this, and that keeps you standing when everything else is falling apart. This kind of hope is not blind optimism. It doesn't pretend that problems don't exist. It doesn't deny the tears, the hurt, or the questions. It simply refuses to stop at them. It says, yes, this hurts, but it will not have the last word. It says, yes, I lost something, but I will not lose my faith. Eternal hope gives you the courage to walk through the valley because you know there is a mountain on the other side. It gives you the strength to keep planting seeds even when the ground looks dry because you believe the harvest will come. When your hope is tied to eternity, you stop panicking every time life shifts. You stop thinking that one failure is the end of your story. You stop letting fear dictate your decisions. You can face uncertainty with confidence because your hope isn't in the economy, the government, the doctor's report, or even your own ability to fix things. It's in the God who holds eternity in his hands. And because he holds eternity, he holds you. Hope beyond earthly circumstances is what keeps you singing in the midnight hour. It's what allows you to smile in the face of trouble and keep walking forward when everyone else would quit. It's what makes your faith unshakable because you know that no matter what happens here, the best is still ahead. This kind of hope does more than get you through the day. It shapes the way you live every day with confidence, joy, and expectation for what is to come. Living with a sense of urgency means understanding that time is not guaranteed and opportunities are not unlimited. Every sunrise is a gift, and every day you wake up is one less day you have to fulfill the purpose God gave you. When you see life through the lens of eternity, you stop living casually and start living intentionally. You begin to recognize that procrastination is one of the enemy's most effective traps. He doesn't have to get you to rebel outright. He just has to get you to delay. I'll get serious tomorrow. I'll forgive later. I'll start praying when I have time. Before you know it, weeks, months, even years pass, and the very things God's called you to do are still undone. Urgency wakes you up. It tells you a now matter. It makes you evaluate how you spend your time because you know you cannot get it back. You stop wasting hours on things that drain your spirit and start investing in things that make an eternal difference. You spend less time scrolling and more time seeking. You spend less time comparing and more time cultivating. You spend less time chasing approval and more time chasing after God. When you live with urgency, you stop treating your calling like a hobby and start treating it like a mission. An urgent life is not a frantic life. It doesn't mean you never rest. It means you rest with purpose. It doesn't mean you work in panic. It means you work with focus. You know what matters most, so you prioritize it. If you only had 1 year left, would you keep wasting time on petty drama? Would you keep delaying the things God told you to do? Probably not. You would forgive faster, love deeper, serve more boldly, and pray more earnestly. That's what living with urgency looks like. Living today like it matters forever, because it does. Urgency also keeps you alert spiritually. The enemy loves to lull believers to sleep, to make them comfortable, passive, and numb. But when you understand eternity, you stay awake. You recognize spiritual battles as they come. You discern distractions quick. You say yes to divine opportunities when they show up because you know you might not get another chance. Urgency pushes you to act before the moment passes, to share your faith before the door closes, to reconcile with someone before it's too late. When you live with a sense of urgency, you live with passion. You stop letting fear hold you back because you know life is too short to play it safe. You start taking holy risks, stepping into new seasons, and using your gifts boldly because you know one day you will stand before God and give an account. You don't want to say, I meant to. You want to hear, well done. Urgency keeps you moving toward that moment with focus, fire, and faithfulness. Investing in what outlasts you is about shifting your focus from temporary gain to eternal impact. Too many people spend their lives building empires that crumble the moment they are gone. They pour all their energy into what will fade. Money, status, possessions, only to leave behind things that cannot follow them into eternity. But when you choose to invest in what outlasts you, you start building something that carries weight beyond the grave. You start asking, what am I leaving behind that will keep speaking when I'm no longer here? This kind of investment is not just about finances, though generosity is a big part of it. It's about pouring your times and your influence into things that will echo forever. When you mentor someone, you are investing in what outlasts you. When you teach your children to walk in truth, you are shaping generations you may never meet. When you share your faith, you are opening doors for eternal transformation in someone's life. These things cannot be measured by a bank account, but they are priceless in heaven's economy. Living this way forces you to reprioritize what you call. Suddenly, building character becomes more valuable than building comfort. Serving others becomes more fulfilling than serving yourself. You stop obsessing over being remembered for your name and start focusing on making God's name known. Because at the end of the day, no one will care what car you drove, what title you had, or how many followers you gained. But eternity will reflect every act of faithfulness you sow. Investing in what outlasts you also brings freedom. When you are no longer chained to the pursuit of things that fade, you stop living in constant anxiety about losing them. You stop fearing the market crash, the promotion that didn't come, the possessions that break down, because your true treasure is in a place where no thief can steal it and no rust can destroy it. Your life gains stability because it is anchored in something that cannot be shaken. This way of living also brings joy. There is something deeply fulfilling about knowing you are planting seeds you may never see grow, but trusting that they will bear fruit long after you're gone. You start living for legacy, not just lifestyle. You start thinking generationally, asking how your choices today will affect not just you, but those who come after you. This kind of eternal perspective keeps you from wasting your life on trivial pursuits. The truth is, we are all leaving something behind. The question is, what will it be? Will it be regret or reward? Will it be things that fade or things that endure? When you invest in what outlasts you, you leave behind faith, hope, love, and truth that keep pushing light into the world long after you have stepped into eternity. That is the kind of life that will matter forever. Eternity has a way of reframing suffering so that pain is no longer meaningless. When you look at your trials through an eternal lens, you begin to see that they are not just random accidents or cruel punishments. They are part of a much bigger story. Suffering in this life can feel unbearable when you believe this life is all there is. But when you know that eternity is real, suffering takes on purpose. It becomes a refining fire rather than a consuming fire. It becomes something that shapes you, grows you, and prepares you for what is to come. Eternity reminds you that pain is temporary, but the glory that follows is forever. The sleepless nights, the tears, the heartbreak, none of it will last forever, but none of it is wasted either. Every wound is a place where God can pour in His grace. Every loss is a place where His comfort can meet you. Every trial is a place where your faith can be strengthened. Without eternity, suffering feels like an endless tunnel. With eternity, suffering becomes a hallway that leads to something better. This perspective doesn't make the pain vanish, but it does make it bearable. It gives you hope that there is a purpose for the process. It allows you to hold on when life hurts the most because you know that your story doesn't end in the valley. It ends in victory. You start to see that some of the very things that break you are the things God uses to build you. Some of the things you prayed He would remove are the things He uses to prepare you for the assignment He has waiting on the other side. Eternity also helps you endure injustice. When you see evil prosper and good people suffer, it can shake your faith if you think this world is the final chapter. But eternity reminds you that God will make all things right. There is coming a day when every wrong will be judged, every tear will be wiped away, and every hidden act of faithfulness will be rewarded. That means you can forgive even when they don't apologize. You can keep doing good even when no one notices. And you can keep standing even when it costs you something, because you know there is a reward waiting that no one can take away. When you see suffering through the lens of eternity, it even becomes a testimony. People are watching how you respond to pain, and when they see you trust God anyway, when they see you praise through tears, when they see you hold on to hope when others would give up, it points them to the reality of something bigger than this life. Eternity turns suffering into a stage where God can display His glory through your endurance. Eternity keeps you accountable because it reminds you that life does not end with the last breath. It continues into a realm where every action, every word, every decision will be evaluated. When you live as though today is all there is, it is easy to cut corners, compromise, and justify choices that are convenient but not righteous. But when you know you will stand before God one day and give an account, it changes the way you live right now. You stop treating sin casually because you know nothing is hidden from His sight. You stop living recklessly because you realize every decision is building your eternal record. Accountability is not about fear that paralyzes you. It is about clarity that guides you. It reminds you that this life is a stewardship. Your time, your talents, your opportunities, your relationships, none of them ultimately belong to you. They were entrusted to you for a purpose, and one day you will answer for how you use them. This doesn't just apply to the big things. Even the small, unseen acts matter in eternity's eyes. The conversations no one heard, the sacrifices no one thanked you for, the moments you chose integrity when no one was watching, all of it counts. Living with this sense of accountability makes you intentional. You stop wasting days on trivial pursuits because you know every day is a deposit into eternity. You choose to forgive because you know bitterness has no place in God's presence. You choose honesty because you know lies will not stand in the light of His judgment. You choose faithfulness in your assignments, whether it's raising children, serving at work, or leading others, because you know there is an eternal reward for those who finish well. Eternity also keeps you humble. When you remember that one day you will kneel before the Creator of the universe, pride loses its grip. Suddenly impressing people doesn't seem as important as pleasing God. You stop comparing your life to others because you realize you will not be judged against their race. You will be judged for how you ran yours. That perspective frees you from the trap of envy and competition and drives you toward obedience. And yes, eternity keeps you courageous. Knowing that there will be a day of reckoning empowers you to stand for truth even when it's unpopular. You are willing to take risks for righteousness because you know your ultimate approval doesn't come from people. It comes from the one who will say, "Well done." That is the voice you want to hear on that day, so you live with purpose today. When you let eternity hold you accountable, you stop living aimlessly. Every choice becomes an opportunity to honor God and prepare for the moment you will see Him face to face. That moment is coming, and living with that reality in mind keeps your steps steady and your heart focused. Time is one of the most valuable gifts you have, but it is not yours to own. It is yours to steward. You cannot create more of it. You cannot slow it down, and you cannot get back what you waste. Every second that passes is gone forever, which is why how you use it matters so much. When you see time as something you control, you tend to waste it, fill it with distractions, or put off what is most important. But when you see time as something God entrusted to you, it becomes sacred. You start asking, how can I use these moments in a way that honors Him and moves me closer to His purpose? Seeing time as a stewardship changes the way you live your days. You stop letting other people's priorities dictate your schedule. You start aligning your calendar with your calling. You give the first and best of your time to God, knowing that everything else flows from that connection. You become intentional about building rhythms that strengthen your spirit instead of drain it. Prayer, worship, rest, study, because you know those are the things that prepare you for eternal impact. This perspective also challenges procrastination. When you realize time is not promised, you stop putting off what matters most. You stop saying, "I'll do it someday," because someday may never come. You forgive now, you obey now, you love now, you act now. You stop wasting hours on things that do not matter in the light of eternity. Endless scrolling, petty arguments, meaningless pursuits, because you understand that those hours are part of your eternal investment. Stewarding time well also means knowing when to say no. Not every opportunity is a God opportunity, and not everything that looks urgent is actually important. When you treat time as a gift, you guard it carefully. You stop saying yes to everything just to keep people happy, and you start saying yes to the things that will bear eternal fruit. This keeps you from living exhausted and burned out, because you are not just busy, you are purposeful. Time stewardship brings accountability and peace. Accountability, because you know that one day you will give an answer for how you spent it. Peace, because when you are walking in God's timing, you no longer feel like you are running behind or rushing ahead. You move in step with Him. You live each day fully present, knowing that it is a day God handcrafted for you to glorify Him and make a difference. When you begin to treat time as a stewardship, you no longer waste it, you invest it. And when you invest it in eternal things, you gain a return that will last forever. Every minute becomes meaningful, every day becomes an opportunity, and every season becomes part of a bigger story that God is writing with your life. Living with the end in mind brings a deep sense of peace because it frees you from the constant pressure of trying to control everything. When you know where the story ends, when you know that eternity is secure, that God has the final word, and that His promises will stand, you can stop living in panic about the twists and turns of today. You are no longer driven by fear of the unknown because you know how the book closes. That confidence allows you to live with calm even in a chaotic world. When the end is clear, you stop obsessing over every detail. You stop worrying about every setback, every delay, every detour, because you understand that none of it is wasted. Every moment, the victories, the trials, the surprises, is part of the journey that leads you toward what God has already prepared. That perspective gives you the ability to breathe when life feels heavy. You don't have to carry the weight of controlling every outcome because you trust the one who already sees the outcome. Living with the end in mind also helps you stop striving for validation from the wrong places. You don't have to live for the applause of people or the approval of culture because you are living for the day you will stand before God. That day becomes the reference point for how you make decisions, how you handle criticism, and how you navigate challenges. You are no longer swayed by every opinion because you are anchored in the only opinion that will matter forever. Peace comes when you realize that this world is not your ultimate home. You don't have to cling so tightly to everything here because you know something better is coming. Loss still hurts, but it doesn't destroy you because you know eternity will restore what was broken. Pain still stings, but it doesn't paralyze you because you know joy is waiting on the other side. Even death loses its power to terrify you because you know it is not the end. It is the doorway to what you were made for. This kind of peace allows you to live boldly. You stop playing it safe and start taking steps of faith because you know your security doesn't depend on circumstances. You live generously, love deeply, forgive quickly, and serve wholeheartedly because you know time is short, but eternity is long. You stop living as if everything is random and start living as if everything is preparation. When you keep the end in mind, you live lighter. You don't have to prove yourself, fix everything, or control everyone because you trust the one who holds the whole story. That trust turns anxiety into assurance and worry into worship. And that is where true peace is found, not in knowing what tomorrow holds, but in knowing the one who holds tomorrow and who has already written the perfect ending.